I think, spending 6 months out of the loop, if they're with their parents, and they're getting that emotional connection every day, even if they're not seeing other people, like,
Yeah.
I mean,
If you
it
have a
remains to be
hangover,
seen.
we're
We'll
okay.
find out years from now, but I don't think it's going to do much damage. I think that, we're going to be okay as long as we're remembering to hug and kiss them every day. Welcome to Dadsplaining, a weekly chronicle of all the weirdest, messiest, grossest, and funniest parts of fatherhood, hosted by two first-time dads. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Brandon.
And this week, we are coming to you from our homes because we are all still under quarantine. And we're going to be talking this week about the realities of parenting in the age of COVID, how this crazy pandemic has totally thrown us off our routines and created a new normal, what that looks like on a day-to-day basis, all the good, the bad, and the ugly. But before we get into all of that, hey, Brandon, if our listeners want to reach out to us with questions or comments, if they'd like to be a guest on the show or just share a fun personal parenting story, where can they find us?
Yeah, please give us a like or a follow on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Dadsplaining Podcast. You can reach us directly at dadsplainingpodcast@gmail.com. And then you can find this and every episode anywhere you get your podcasts.
Exactly. So, every week we usually spend a few minutes at the beginning of the show just to catch up with each other on what's new this week. But since that is kind of the topic for the week, I'm just going to let you lead with this one, Brandon. How are things going? And I know that it's different on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, week-to-week basis. How are things going right now in the Spears house?
Well, let's see. I am on Zoom, embracing the new technology. This is our third video app that we've tried tonight. So, just going to throw ourselves
It
out there
is.
with that. My wife is playing Animal Crossing, which we broke down and bought about a week plus ago because we just needed to do something.
No kidding. Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah,
I'm jealous.
yeah, it's escapist, for the best of us. But after a week, I swear to God, I just can't catch any more moths. Like I need to catch something more interesting. So, if you would like, please leave a comment with some information about your Animal Crossing character, a username. Want to visit your island. We need some new fish and some new bugs for the museum. And Jesse, that may mean nothing to you, but that's actually perfectly normal Animal Crossing lingo.
No, totally. So I haven't played Animal Crossing since the original came out, which was probably
Yep.
2002-ish.
Yep.
But I was obsessed with it for a couple of years when I was a
Oh yeah.
teenager.
Oh yeah.
And the cool thing about it was it had a running clock. So like if you went a
Yep.
week without playing the game, when you logged back on, a week had gone by and like the neighbors were mad at you for not checking in with them and stuff, and there were weeds all
Yeah.
over the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it's been about
Exactly.
18 years. So I'm wondering kind of.
Oh, that's a morbid thought. What happened to your crew
Oh my God.
18 years ago?
Yeah, I
They've been
didn't leave
waiting
any
on
food
you.
for them.
You're just the old spinster that just doesn't, do anything anymore. But
Yeah.
no, so yeah, instead of dealing with what's going on, and we'll talk about how we're dealing with that, not well,
Mhm. Yeah.
we are living on a beautiful island of our own design, and it's going great.
Oh my
From
God.
that perspective. But in the real world, it's going less than great.
Mhm.
And I don't really know. I could spend a lot of time talking about it. I don't know if you want to just cut me off there, and that's really all that's going on with me right now, and then save the juicy bits for a little bit later, and maybe we
Sure.
just get a quick vibe of what's going on right now in your life.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So things have not developed a whole lot from when we chatted last week, except that I put my wife's car in the shop because I rear-ended a guy by accident pulling out
Oh
of the
goodness,
neighborhood last weekend, which was a fun experience. So
you
now
and the
we're
one other guy on the road. Okay,
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is Georgia, and they've reopened half the businesses for some reason. So
all
now there's a
right.
lot more cars on the road.
You were all heading to the
So
barber shop. Yeah.
he was on his way to the barber shop. I was on my way to the bowling alley,
Oh,
and
good.
then the
Yes.
skating rink, and then the movie theater. So that's what was going on, and totally threw off each other's day. But no one was hurt. Everyone was okay. But now I got to deal with the insurance and the repairs and all that fun stuff. But everyone is, otherwise good. David is still, growing like crazy. I don't know if I talked about this
Mhm.
last week, but he's going through a growth spurt right now.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so we're having to, keep track of which clothes don't fit him anymore, and adjusting his car seat if we need to get him in the car. So there's a lot of adjustments going on, and he's being really picky eating right now, more so than he
I'm sorry.
was
That's
like
new.
No, it's not new, but every once in a while he'll eat something one night, and you convince yourself that, oh, this is the turn. This
This
is
is it.
turning over the new leaf, and he's going to be
Absolutely.
fine. And then that like illusion just gets shattered the next night, and you're just depressed all over again.
This is so true.
So
I feel like we've been at that step like 20 or 30 times, and
yeah,
it hasn't actually gotten better.
exactly. But listeners, if you'll remember a couple of weeks ago when we had our guest who was the author of the book about eating and nutrition and that kind of stuff, the big takeaway was that phase is not going to last forever, and I'm trying to remind myself of that it's okay if he eats nothing but fruit and crackers and Cheerios for 3 months. Like, he'll change eventually. That's what I'm telling myself, whether or not it turns out to be true. Um, but yeah, that's about kind of where we are. I mean, obviously, like, our routines look very different from what they did before
Yeah.
quarantine. I don't have a commute. Um, the line of the work-life balance has blurred until it's completely invisible, and now I'm not sure when I'm
Mhm.
on the clock and when I'm not, which is really confusing and exhausting. Um, but
Yeah.
it's also kind of cool to just be able to walk downstairs and sit down on my computer and get to work instead of sitting in traffic for an hour.
True.
So there are pros and cons. There's some things I'm loving and some things I'm hating. I'm guessing that's kind of what everyone's going through right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for sure. It's the good news is that the things that I'm loving all fit within the related to my son category.
Hmm.
So that's good. It should be that the parts of life we enjoy as parents is somewhat related in the parenting category. So that's been nice. I do get to spend a ton of time with my son. And most of the time when I'm hanging out with him and we're playing, we're doing something that he finds amusing and is either nonsensical or just incredibly silly, and therefore it's enjoyable. So I just have to try to do as much of that as possible. Um, the problem is that's very exhausting. It's very hard to keep up with it. So I'll back up maybe, and maybe we just kind of get rolling here in terms of the meat of it, of just like what the actual daily life looks like right now. Because while we're all kind of going through something similar, even you and I are doing it differently, and then you, me, and two other people are going to be doing it differently. Slight variations can have a lot of difference. So on a day-to-day basis, I am working and parenting in pretty much equal measures throughout the day. I'm home and my son is home. My wife is home some days, and some of those days when she's home, she's working, and some of the days when she's home, she actually has the day off. Her schedule is basically 6 days a week because she's an essential worker. They just changed it in the state of Georgia. Our faith-loving community, they just decided that they didn't have to work on Sundays anymore. So I guess True Kathy came back and declared that that was still a thing. So that finally just changed. But other than that, 6 days a week, and when she's working, it's basically like 10 to 12-hour days. The good news is it's kind of morphed over time. So now she's usually working from home once or twice a week, and then she gets 2 days off a week. So it kind of sounds like on more normal, you work 5 days out of the seven and you get your weekend, but her weekend isn't always on the weekend. Um, and we've kind of grown toward that point. It hasn't always been the way, but as an essential worker's life has gone from the, oh crap moment when everything kicked off to, okay, we're actually 2 months into this, and we would all die if we just worked nonstop. So we need to actually think about that. That has been very beneficial from that perspective, but her schedule does change week to week. So it's kind of hard to pin it down.
Yeah.
And because her schedule changes week to week, my schedule has to change week to week to accommodate, because basically if she's not here, I'm solo parenting slash solo working. So for me, a typical day is still kind of that Groundhog Day that most parents are probably feeling like they're living, where you just wake up and you do it all over again. And I balance kind of keeping track of some work chatter and emails on my phone while my son's with me. Um, and I have a couple of days where I kind of work slash parent in in no rhyme or reason whatsoever, which is to say that if I get in anywhere from like 4 to 8 hours in one of those days of quote work, that's a win. And then I have usually 2 to 3 days out of the week where somebody else is around to take care of my son either part of the time with me, and we do that kind of thing that a lot of parents are doing where we're both home with the kids and we can kind of shift in and out of working when one of us really needs to and the other one parents when that person's busy. And then what I've basically had to do, if you've been keeping up with us, is that our daycare hasn't been open for quite a while.
Yeah.
But they did actually just reopen a little over a week ago,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not going back yet to daycare.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
We can talk about that, a little bit more detail, but it's just, there's a lot of decisions that go along with it. But
Definitely.
my, I don't really know how to say it, just to be honest, like my sanity couldn't keep up with the enormity of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically I needed some help.
Yeah.
And so I decided that what was going to be, in order to get help with, being able to balance work and taking care of my son, 24/7, I was going to have my parents help fill in. And so they would keep my son, 1 or 2 days a week so that I could work.
Yeah.
Uh, so there's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot that
Mm-hmm.
goes on there, but basically the theme is chaos.
Yeah.
Um, and the regular consistent factor is that it's always changing.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly difficult and wearing and taxing and at times frustrating. Uh, Certainly equal mixtures of depressing and yet sometimes enjoyable and yet sometimes stressful and all of that good stuff.
Yeah. So one thing that I do kind of like about it though is like there are two things that happen. One was you reach a point, and this happened for me too, where you have to admit that things aren't normal and that you can't operate at the normal capacity that you used to be able to do. And then in your case, you said, okay, I need backup here. I need another set of hands to watch the kid. And then you asked for help, and then you had that a couple of days a week. And that little thing, I'm sure it hasn't totally turned things around for you and made everything magically easy all of a sudden, but it helps to have that backup and to have someone that can watch Noah while you're getting your job done, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think hopefully, people will figure out what they need. And I've talked
Mm-hmm.
to several friends and other people that I'm closer, or maybe not even totally close to, but I just know their parents, and you just kind of talk as parents. We're all in the same club, and you just kind of hear how different people are doing it. And like I mentioned, and you'll talk about your situation. Our situations are different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from our perspective, like maybe some parents, we were like, okay. Um, Daycare is not an option, or even if it is an option, we were a little afraid of that.
Sure.
And so we were going to try to tough it out if we could without it. And then you have to think, okay, a lot of people aren't even letting their family see,
Yeah.
their kids. Grandparents aren't seeing each other. So I hear
Mm-hmm.
people say that to me, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, sure, it makes sense. Like any amount of exposure is a risk, but you kind of made the point that I think we're at, where after several weeks and now it's months, and there's more ahead of us, like you have to decide at a certain point. There's some decisions that are kind of out of your hands in some ways, and even if
Mm-hmm.
you could hunker down and bunker up, um, maybe that's just not a real decision because it wouldn't be good for your, I don't know what you want to call it, mental state, self-care, your
Mental
well-being,
health. Yeah.
your
Well-being, all of
well-being,
those
because
things.
that's kind of how it starts to feel.
Yeah.
And what I would say is basically that I did need help, and I realized that pretty early on. And this has been kind of the routine for a couple of weeks, but the thing is that I still need more help. I
Mm-hmm.
have been continuing to struggle. And it's not, I don't know, sure, maybe I'm just not good enough at it. But I continue to need help. And so I'm continuing to try to figure out how can I share the load more,
Yeah.
lean on other people more, or just
Mm-hmm.
reconfigure it more, because then we're going to have to start making tough decisions as working parents, where the working side is going to come back as things open,
Yeah.
and we have to figure out, okay, if I'm working 40 hours a week, like if I've been doing the stay at home thing, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You're going to start to underperform, and
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have different problems.
Yeah, no, that's kind of the situation that I'm in, and that was the one thing that, um, I mean, even just recently, even in the past week, I had to kind of reassess and change my approach to things because, for the first like month and a half of quarantine, I was trying to um, generate the exact same output that I was generating when I was in the office 40 hours a week.
Mhm.
So, as a result of that, I was kind of obsessively watching my hours, you know? So, um, if I take a break, for an hour and a half to do some yard work or some housework, I'm like, okay, well, I either got to get up early the next day to make up for that, or I got to work into the evening or something like that. And it just got to the point where it wasn't good. It wasn't good for my mental health, and it certainly wasn't good for my wife's mental health because she was like,
No.
okay, what are you doing awake at 5 in the morning working, when you don't have to? So it was kind of a bitter pill for me to swallow, and I'm still struggling with it a lot, of just accepting the fact that, I may be logged on for a full day. I may not actually be working that entire day. I may be doing some other things to take care of the house or take care of my own sanity. And it's hard for me to accept. I guess I'm a workaholic and I have to think that I'm performing or overperforming all the time. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
that's interesting,
yeah,
because there's no way we could possibly dig into all the pieces of it, but it's just like I
we don't
feel
have
like
time to, yeah,
I mean, it would take forever, and there's
yeah.
no answer. The problem with all of this is there's not really a answer. There's just
Hmm.
some. There is no the answer. There's an answer that can
Yeah.
be a solution. Um, anyway, it basically just thinking about the fact that like you were over indexing on work, and I feel like I've been under indexing on work. Neither
Hmm.
one of those is wrong necessarily, but it's just like, you know my mindset has been on the opposite side, where it's just like, well, everyone kind of knows what's going on, and we all know that there's these challenges that nobody can predict, and so generally speaking, we try to be cool with each other when external factors are going on, and people are certainly being a lot more lenient on the work side of things, but at the same time, you're making a good point that you need to keep up the work because you gotta create that living.
Yeah.
But I struggle with being motivated to work because I feel like I'm I'm doing things and making decisions to keep my family safe. And
Yeah.
it's like, who's going to tell you um, that you shouldn't do that? I
Definitely.
just that keeps playing in the back of my mind. I was like, is there ever going to be a point where we have to have an awkward conversation where people are like, you're actually not producing enough at work, and my rebuttal is, well, I'm just trying to keep my family safe, and this is
Yeah.
what it takes to do it. And how do you? That's an impasse. That sucks.
It is, yeah, because those conflicts are gonna come up. It's weird because, like, at the moment, it's funny because and I had this conversation with my wife the other day. I've been doing pretty well at work. There's some things that I've been doing that have performed pretty well in terms of projects I've been working on, and what I should be doing and what I can do is kind of see that and say, "Okay, that's good. That's visible, so I can relax a little bit."
Mm,
And,
mhm.
and kinda let that kinda cover for if I'm, not on all the time.
Yeah,
And that's kinda hard for me to do, but there will come a time, in my job or in anyone's job where, in this day and age right now, you're not doing as much as you were before. And that's gonna be a conflict because that's true of everybody, but, your company's still gotta make money. That's a reality in order to stay in business. So
yeah.
again,
I think
I don't know what the answer is, except, hey, managers and employers, if you're listening to this, try and be patient with the folks that are working for you because we're all kind of going through it at the same time. So, on a day to day basis, and I've kind of gone through this in the past couple of episodes, but David, my 2.5-year-old, is still in daycare. The school that he goes to in my part of Georgia has stayed open the entire time. They've been adhering to the CDC's recommendations for sanitation and, who's allowed in the building, which the answer is no one except for the teachers and the kids.
Mhm,
They're
mhm.
down to, I'd say, maybe 10% of the normal amount of students in the building. So,
Okay.
it's something that I was nervous about at first. We decided to keep them in because that's an option to make it easier for us to get our jobs done. And we live nowhere near our parents. So, having them to kind of lend a hand wasn't an option for us. So that
Right.
was the risk that we decided to take. And over time, I've gotten more comfortable with it. especially because my part of Georgia has not. It's been impacted the same way every part of every state has, but not to the same degree as the more urban areas has.
Sure, sure.
So the risk isn't there quite as much, especially when everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing and there aren't as many people there. So, that was the decision we made. And that has allowed me on a day to day basis to take it easy a little bit more. So, what's happening is I'm waking up probably an hour later than I were. Uh, Wow, man, I'm tired. It's late.
Oh, that sounded actually good to me. That's why I'm I'm tired too.
We're both screwed up, man.
Yeah, then you were. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, about an hour later than I was when I was going into the office. So I'm sleeping in a little bit more, and I am, I'm logging on. I'm getting some work done. I'm taking a break to do some yard work. I'm logging back on, and then I log off in the afternoon. And then what's cool is my kid's daycare is walking distance from our house. So
Oh, wow.
my wife and I'll grab the stroller. We'll walk over to daycare, grab him, come on back to the house. Some things that have maybe changed in the routine is we've allowed David to start staying up later. Just because he has that energy. He's at that stage of his life where he just wants to stay up and play with his toys or talk on the phone to the grandparents. We do the video chat as much as we
Yeah,
can,
yeah, that's nice.
or watch Frozen because he is completely freaking obsessed with Elsa right now. Um, it's a phase he's going through, and I really
That's
miss the days
amazing.
when he was obsessed with things that I enjoyed, like
Hey,
Moana or
no, come
Coco, or
on.
Well, hey, no, I'm not knocking Elsa. I'm not knocking Elsa and Anna and
Is he more of a
Olaf.
Frozen 1 or a Frozen 2 guy? I just gotta know.
It's he loves the songs from Frozen 2. And I like the
Okay.
music from Frozen 2. The plot kind of lost me. And we can dig into that in another episode. We can be
I just
kids
want to plug
movies.
that
Yeah.
Into the Unknown is the jam song for me and my son. Um,
Hmm.
that's what we jam out to. So
It's
I just
he
wanted
listens to
to
that. Oh yeah. He
yeah,
listens to that at least once a day. And that one's good. It's the one where the dudes is it Sven is the moose, right?
yeah, Sven's the reindeer.
Reindeer, right?
Easy.
And what is the guy's name?
Kristoff. Yeah.
Christoph, the one with Christoph singing in the woods, and he's
Oh, the
lost in the woods.
moody, crazy guy song. Yeah, that one
Yeah,
we could
yeah.
just skip. That's a skip.
That one they could have cut out of the movie, but anyway, we're going off on a tangent. So anyway, he likes what he likes to watch.
Yeah,
And then we'll let him to go to bed a little later, which the plus side is he sleeps in a little bit later.
nice.
But some positive things that are happening is we're cooking at home more because when we go out to get groceries, we're buying more to last us longer so that we don't
Right,
have to
right,
go out
right.
as often. And dining in at restaurants isn't an option right now. It is in some cases, but it's not one that we're really ready to take yet. So we're eating a little bit healthier. My wife and I are spending some more time outside, working on, I mentioned this before, working on our patio, kind of building an extension, which has been kind of a fun side project.
Yeah.
So there's positives to kind of look at, and what I'm completely waxing over is the crushing anxiety that I felt in the first few weeks of quarantine. I don't know
Okay,
how much of
everything's
this.
not fine. Got it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's better now. I don't know how much of this I dug into in the first couple of episodes that we recorded, you know, um, in the past couple of weeks, but man, it was bad for a while. Like I was like really bad, at least a couple of days a week. I couldn't think straight because I was just thinking of like, what is this thing going on? And, what am I putting myself at risk, for if I have to run to the store to grab something and then come back? It was rough. And I was kind of a little disabled by it. Like I was afraid to do certain things and I had to kind of shake myself out of that. My wife really helped me out with that.
This is a good
And
one. You should hold on to that. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a keeper for sure. And there's some things that I've done to kind of help myself out with that. Spending time outside has really helped. Getting fresh air and you know hearing. I mean, it's cheesy, but hearing birds singing and and keeping your hands busy doing stuff in the yard is a good way to kind of ground yourself,
Mhm.
literally. Getting a little bit of exercise when I can, taking walks. I mean, I've gotten into meditation, and that's something that we could talk about in
Okay.
another episode. But like
Yeah.
nothing super existential and spiritual, but just little recordings to kind of practice breathing in and out, stuff like that. Is really good for managing anxiety. And it's something that you cope with on a day-to-day basis. I know a lot of people are coping with that maybe hadn't experienced it before. It was never really a problem for me
Yeah.
until the world was engulfed in a critical pandemic. Go figure.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. There's
But
a good day and there's a bad day, and
mhm.
sometimes there's both.
Exactly. Yeah. In the same day, in the same minute and hour.
Yeah.
But to kind of walk away from that subject, because that's kind of an unresolved thing that's just getting a little better all the time. Something that you said kind of jogged my memory of kind of what we're going through. When you mentioned that you brought your parents into the mix
Yeah.
after a
Yeah.
while to kind of help out with Noah. And that was the risk that you guys chose to take over re-enrolling in daycare
Yep.
when
Yep.
when that option became available again. And that's a decision that every parent has to make on their own. Absolutely. And I'm really thankful that you guys have that option and that they're so close. We for a very long time did not make any visits to our parents. We've made one cautious visit to one set of David's grandparents within the past week. And we're kind of figuring out, how and when to do the next one.
Gotcha.
And that's something that you go off of what and then you kind of weigh that against what you don't know, and what kind of the steps I went through mentally was, okay, well, I know where that set of grandparents has been. I
Right.
know for the most
Right.
part who they've been around, for the past 8 weeks, and I know that they haven't experienced any symptoms, and neither has anyone they know. And we all know that asymptomatic is a thing,
Yep.
but if that entire circle has not experienced anything, well, then maybe that's a risk that you're more comfortable taking. And I'm not advising anyone to do that if they're not comfortable doing it, but that was how we kind of became comfortable with the decision. And it was a really nice reunion, definitely for the grandparents. It's a good
Yes.
experience to see the grandkid again, for David as well, and for us to see our family. So, you know, um, it was a good feeling, but there's definitely anxiety mixed into the mix there. And I don't even know if I'm on topic at this point.
You're completely on topic. That's the topic is this is a if this was an after hours show, it would be called a blank show.
Hmm.
Is what we're going through right now. Um, and I think we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
I don't think it. I know we don't know what we're doing. But
Hmm.
the crushing anxiety is what it is, and it's daunting. What I get hung up on is thinking about, okay, we've been doing a very challenging thing for a couple of months, and it's not over yet. So it will be a good little while longer, and things are going back to the way they were. I won't say normal. And so I kind of referenced it, but part of the thing that hurts me a little bit is that it feels like decisions are being taken away from us in a sense, that like we are going to be kind of pushed back into the quote normal life,
Hmm.
without the fact that the risk is gone. The risk isn't gone, and so you have to decide what aspects of risk can you invite in. If there's an option to continue to shelter for however many months longer it takes, that is an amazing option, and it would be incredibly appealing to try to pull it off. I don't know if I could. I think I've already shown that I've started to take some risks, so
Yeah.
probably not. But it's just like even saying that I've reached out and gotten help from someone who's not within this household of where I'm living just proves that like I had to be comfortable with the fact that there's some level of risk with that. And I
Hmm.
just quickly kind of got past that point, and it was like, this is what's necessary for me. Um,
Yeah.
but then, like you said, daycare, it's back open again. You could go back to it. We didn't go back to it week one. We didn't go back to it week
Hmm.
two. Don't know that we'll go back to it in week three, week four, week five. What happens when, your job says that you can come back into the office?
Yeah.
What happens when my job says that I can come back to the office? Can I tell them that I don't want to,
Hmm.
um,
Well.
and stay home? You know what I mean? And keep my
Hmm.
son home still, and just keep doing basically the same thing we've been doing. And how long is it sustainable? And so those are the kinds of questions where it's just like, okay, we need some help in order to kind of continue to, I kind of almost see it as like the risk, I guess, is helping us stretch out the ability to continue surviving with the least amount of risk for the longest period of time.
Exactly. Well, and and there's two things on that, when we're talking specifically about going back to work and, how are we going to make that decision when push comes to shove? And I think there's two things that kind of work in our favor. And that one is, and this is not true of every line of work in every industry, but many jobs I think we're finding these days can be largely done remote. We found that business is being disrupted in a lot of ways, but I think that we're finding certain things, you know, certain meetings could have just been video chats or emails. Some things can be
Sure.
done from your laptop, on your couch in your living room. And I've heard, from some businesses, or some people that work for certain businesses that, I mean, that's a cost savings for employers, to not
Yeah.
have bodies in the office and to not have to pay for all of that equipment. And, that's something that I think people may find attractive. And I think the other thing that is on some employers' minds is the liability of everything. If you bring
Yeah.
everyone back into the office too soon and someone infects somebody else and you start a little hot spot, there in your office. Um, what risk does that put you at as a business,
Right.
at risk of, lawsuits, that kind of thing. So I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what the case is there, but I know that that's got to be something that is on the mind of businesses, especially ones that employ lots of people in an office space. So, I would like to think that, when we start opening offices back up again, employers are going to be smart and say, okay, well, everyone who does this kind of job, y'all still stay home as often as you can and for as long
Right.
as you can. And I know that some companies are going to be staggering it where the whole office doesn't go in at once. Maybe they bring in one department and then the next department and see how things go. So
Segregate, things like that. Yeah.
yeah, maybe I'm being overly optimistic. I don't know, but I feel like you've
Yeah.
got some
There's
risk
a lot
takers
of,
that are dumb, and you've got some people that are going to be cautious and kind of do it right. So,
I
fingers
think there's
crossed.
the fear is that like we're just gonna kind of feel like we're done as a society and that we did it
Hmm.
when we didn't really finish the job, so to speak, and that we just kind of let things go back when things are different. And
Yeah,
that's a really weird fear. And
it
then
is. Yeah.
there's the parenting side of it. And like even though I could continue to maybe keep my son home with me and out of daycare, there's another component that I get to be afraid of about where like his education, like
Hmm.
and his advancement. I don't know what we want to call it, right? Like we talked at length in episodes about why we chose daycare. Teachers who are certified and have educations in training to then teach our children, and there's a curriculum, and like we have 0% of that at homeschool taught by Brandon. We
Hmm.
have none whatsoever. And so for a couple of months, okay, that's great. We're just hanging out, we're playing, we're having a good time, right? But I'm not planning a lot of activities. I'm not planning, a curriculum of any kind, and that's part of my struggle. And if I did that for 6 more months, like, okay, at what point is it a risk, or a challenge to my son's, development, or not even, and I'm not talking like a mental situation, like mental development, lags, but just like the socializing, the friend building, the bonding, just kind of the growth. I'm also not going to pretend that like his healthy eating habits are at severe risk.
Hmm.
So what's amusing is that the daycare that we had recently switched daycares before this happened, and he was there for a month, and then we pulled him out,
Yeah.
and he hasn't been back, and it's unfortunate. He couldn't really get
Hmm.
settled. He kind of got settled, and then another funny part of it is that the daycare is eco-friendly, so it's all vegetarian food basically. That was like, we joked that was the one good meal he had a day, and like now he doesn't have that anymore. He had a
Yeah.
happy meal today, so it's just like, okay,
Hmm.
you know there's not enough anxiety as a parent.
Right.
I think we could use more.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
so that's where I kind of get bummed out if I think too far ahead,
Hmm.
of just like, okay, now I'm depriving the child and it's
Well,
making it
but
worse.
here's the thing, though. If you really think about it, everyone is going to be on the same page when all of this is over. Even the kids that are in daycare, like mine is. I mean, before when it was a full classroom, they were learning sign language and other languages and stuff, like even at the toddler
Right.
stages.
Right.
They're not doing that right now. You know what I mean? Like there's two kids in the room. They're probably playing with toys, taking naps, eating snacks, and then everyone else is out of school. So everyone is, and that's what I'm trying to remind myself of is that everyone is going to be on the same page when all this is over because we've all been out of the
Yeah.
loop together. No parent is being a 100% pro with the homeschooling thing. And I think we got to let ourselves off the hook for that.
Yeah, I don't compare
It's,
him because if I compared him, my son's a genius. He's way smarter than your
oh
kid,
yeah. Oh, whoa, whoa,
for
whoa, whoa,
sure.
whoa, 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 whoa,
Well,
whoa,
oh,
whoa.
no, 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 not your kid, not your kid. I'm just your kid, the
Your
general
kid, the
your.
listeners.
Yeah, the worldwide your. Our kids are the smartest. They're 1 and 2.
Hmm.
Mine 1, yours 2. But
Whoa, whoa,
then
whoa.
other than that, 1.5 apiece. Okay, fine. But yeah, just the development, right? Like I think about, could he be learning something today, and is he learning anything today? I'm not going to say
Oh,
that he
yeah.
isn't, because he's learned about every possible construction vehicle and what their names all are.
Yeah.
So that is what I have taught him.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. But I mean, honestly, we do a lot for our kids these days in terms of their early development, and it's great. Like I'm not knocking it. I am 100% excited about the fact that my kid can, learn all of these things and socialize with other kids at an early age. But that's something that I didn't get as a kid.
Yeah.
I wasn't in a class until preschool. Until I was like 4 or 5 years old.
Okay.
Up to
Yep.
that point, I was just with my parents and grandparents,
Yeah.
and cousins, occasionally. And I turned out fine. We'll say fine.
Decent. Yeah.
Uh,
You're a functioning member of society. Yeah. You're okay.
yeah, exactly. But I haven't murdered anyone at this point in my life, so I'm pretty well adjusted, I'd say.
Now, wait a
Um,
minute. Did they interview you about Tiger King? Because there's a missing, link there. We're still looking for the person. Is that leopard print you're wearing? What do you got on there? No, I'm kidding.
no, it's
Uh,
floral. But all I'm trying to say
all you
is,
cool cats and kittens. Okay.
yeah, I think spending 6 months out of the loop, if they're with their parents, and they're getting that emotional connection every day, even if they're not seeing other people, like
Yeah.
I mean,
Could be a
it remains to be
non-smoker.
seen. We'll
We're
we'll
okay.
find out years from now, but I don't think it's going to do much damage. I think that we're going to be okay as long as we're remembering to hug and kiss them every day. It after we've sanitized. After we've gotten back from the grocery store. Um, so, yeah, I feel like this episode has kind of turned into group therapy, which is an awesome thing, and was probably needed for us
Yeah.
both at this point
Yeah.
in the quarantine.
I
What I
laugh
would
when it
love
was.
yeah, definitely. What I would love to do now is kind of share some comments that we've gotten from other parents that are interacting with us in the social sphere.
Yeah.
Um, I put out this question earlier today. What has been the biggest change in your daily parenting life since the pandemic started? I know you did the same, Brandon. We pulled our
Hmm.
friends. We asked folks in the Dadsplaining parenting group on Facebook. Which, by the way, folks, if you're not a part of that, just search Dadsplaining group and you'll find it. Join in there. We'd love to have you. So let's see, Brandon. I will read off mine and then I will kick it over to you. Is that all right?
That's great.
Okay, so I got a couple of cool comments. Alexa says that her kids are so over digital school. They miss their friends and their routines. All the summer camps are canceled, so there's nothing to look forward to. And her problem is she feels like she's just the bearer of bad news for them. She says, our household routine has collapsed because I figure right now it's better to try and be happy than on a schedule. And so there's a lot of negative in there, and it ends on a really positive note, which is something that I agree with. Um, you know, our routines are madness right now. It's nothing looks the same as it did before, but it's more important to kind of be happy with what you've got than try and cling to that schedule that you used to have. So Alexa, thanks for that. Sil says, and this is a complaint that we can all agree with, I can't find the stupid work, children, house, school balance. 7 weeks in, it's hard to find the balance between everything. I think we can all relate to that.
There isn't one. Yeah.
Exactly. So Kendall, who is my cousin, whom I love dearly, she says nothing's really changed for her in terms of her parenting routine because she was a work from home parent before all of this started. So in terms of her day to day routine, totally what it was before having a kid, hanging on you while you are trying to get your job done. So she says, feel my pain. um, Online school has been the hardest thing for LaShawn to get used to. Anna says she's had to establish a super strict routine during the days for online schooling and creative time, and she's gotten more
Right.
flexible in the evenings when it comes to bedtime. So that's kind of the flex area that she's doing, which is the same thing I'm doing. Like if your kid wants to stay up until 9 o'clock at night, I'm not gonna die on that hill anymore.
Right.
And her 5-year-old is playing Animal Crossing. So maybe I
Okay.
could link them up with your wife and y'all could play some Animal Crossing together.
Yeah,
That
as long as we're not talking about linking up with underage children, no, it's fine. The digital with 5-year-olds, no. But yeah, we're all playing Animal Crossing. It's a tame game.
I
Yeah,
need to get in on that clearly. And
I
then the
got you.
last note I got was screen time allowed more than usual. That comes from Sarah, and
Oh,
that's
way
something I've
more.
caved
Yeah,
in on as well. I try and keep the kid off the TV and the computer and the phone, but they're just so interested in everything, and they
yeah.
cry so much when you don't let them do it. So
Well, and the
I've
problem is
broken
when you
down.
turn it off, they expect you to then play with them. And what if
Yeah.
you're tired? What if you haven't had your coffee yet?
Oh
What
my
if
gosh,
you
dude.
haven't stopped moving for the last 5 hours and you need a
Hmm.
break?
Yeah. So that's one thing, by the way, that I've had to keep doing. I mean, I'm trying to get more sleep than I used to, but one thing I have to do is get up and have my coffee before my son gets up. Otherwise, I am just a wreck. And I think that's because I do have ADD. And so if I start my
Mhm.
day and there's all of a sudden stimulus from all over,
Yeah,
overstimulating, it freaks me out. So, pro tip: if you feel like you need to focus, just wake up and have your breakfast and your coffee. Try and do that before the kid gets
wake
up.
up and
That's what
smell the
works for me.
coffee. Got it.
Exactly. So those were the comments that I got. Brandon, I think you got a couple too, right?
Yeah, a couple. One from Susan, and this was kind of in a similar vein to a comment you made. So this is someone who has worked from home, but it's kind of interesting. You mentioned the commenter you had where it was the same for them pre and post.
Hmm.
Susan pointed out that it's totally different for her because she is used to being alone when she works from home.
Mm.
Other people are out, they're at school, they're at work, whatever it is. And so she doesn't know where her alone time went, but she wants it back a little bit. And now everyone is around the house 100% of the time, and she's very grateful that her husband is putting in a lot of help with the schooling and all that kind of stuff, but it's just like incredibly intense to be locked in four walls with people all the time.
Yeah.
And even for someone who had done that and signed up for it on the work side of things, it's totally different. Then I've got Naina, who is giving a very um, obvious and common complaint that we all have about she has multiple kids, and it's like, how do you keep up with more than one? And she mentions that she has no idea how people do it with more than two kids, and I joked, I don't know how you do it with two kids, I've only
Uh-huh.
got one. And this is a great the pandemic is great for depressing birth rates, I would imagine, because anyone who is a parent does not want more kids at this point. But she points
That's
out that
true.
the struggle for her is that her older child takes up a lot of her time because he is a little bit more able to ask what's going on. They talk more. They need more engagement in that way. And then her younger child maybe gets a little overlooked, and that's kind of the guilt that eats at her. So I think it's just like too real. You when you have one kid, you're exhausted because you're with them nonstop. When you have two kids, I don't know how you then take 100% and break it in half. I don't think you can
Yeah.
do it.
I don't know. We'll figure it out one day if and
And
when we have more.
a shout out to my friend John, and his family. And he was saying, he brought up a good point. He feels guilty that his son doesn't have a playmate, doesn't have someone his age, literally, to be interacting with. He's stuck only hanging out with his parents. And this is a 5, 6 year old who's just like, okay, help me out here. I want to play with somebody who's actually cool. You know what I mean? Like old enough to kind of get that distinction. And
Yeah.
he's just like, I don't have the energy to keep up with them. And I'm like, yeah, I've got a 2 year old. I don't have as much energy as a 2 year old has, let alone several years older than that.
Mhm.
And it's real. And we got a couple people who agreed with that sentiment. But I just want to say, John, you're doing okay.
Yeah,
In the
definitely.
family, you're doing good. And
Yep.
I got another comment that just acclaimed the digital learning is way too difficult, and we don't appreciate teachers enough.
Definitely. Oh, absolutely. And the last comment that we got was in the Dadsplaining a Fatherhood, or it's Dadsplaining a Parenting group now. I changed the name since we've got moms in the mix as well. So what's changed for her is meltdowns. Her son Jace, who has autism, she says being shut in the house is hard. It's even harder for those who can't process their emotions. And on top of it, I don't know if or when he's sick. So hopefully this virus doesn't affect us because no one will know he's sick unless it's too late. So her issue with her son is he has trouble. I guess it's hard to tell, when they're feeling symptoms because of communication issues. And, that's something that a lot of parents are going through. And, even parents of neurotypical children are dealing with, I'm sure, more meltdowns than usual. That's something we're dealing with because our kids are emotional sponges and they soak up kind of the emotions that we feel. So that's something that I've tried to be more cognizant of that, what am I kind of feeding my son emotionally. So
Mhm.
anyway, that's another topic for another day. But these are all real things that we're all dealing with, and I think the bottom line is we're all doing our best, and the routines are nuts, and they look nothing like they did before. And I think we all just have to accept that that's okay for now, and we'll adjust when things get better, and they will get better. And I'm turning into Jerry Springer at the end of every Jerry Springer episode. So I think now is a good time to wrap it up. What do you say?
Yeah, Jerry was always telling us it will get better. Is that what he was doing? Okay.
I don't know. He always had a moral at the end of every
Oh,
episode,
right,
after the
something.
guy from the KKK has like knocked the head off of the guy who is
Yeah,
the alien
stokes the
conspiracy
fire,
theorist.
and then he's like, "But everything's gonna be fine, kids."
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm kind
So,
of in the camp, and why I thought it was important to talk about it, of just like, it is just too hard.
mhm.
It will get better,
Yeah.
but yeah, right now it's just too hard.
Yeah, and I think we have to open up and talk about stuff like that, and that's why I'm glad that we had a chance, you and me, just to get over video chat tonight and talk about it. And hopefully, all if you're listening at home, wherever you are listening, we know you're going through it too. We feel for you, and it'll get better. So hang in there and
You're
talk
doing
to
a good
somebody.
job.
You're doing a good job. You're doing better than you think you're doing. I think we're all a little underconfident right now because we're just so thrown off our rhythm. But we're doing okay. So hang in there, folks. And on that note, that will do it for this week's episode of Dadsplaining. Brandon, once again, where can our listeners find us in the online stratosphere?
Please give us a like or a follow on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Dadsplaining Podcasts. And if you want to connect with us directly, you can send us an email at dadsplainingpodcast@gmail.com. And then you can check out this and every episode anywhere you get your podcasts.
Exactly. So we don't really have a plan yet for what we're going to chat about this week. There are a few topics that we have talked about discussing. So we're going to leave it a surprise for you. Be sure to tune in next week. We publish new episodes usually every Monday morning. The pandemic has kind of thrown us off our groove there, but usually every Monday. So tune back in and make sure to subscribe to us. And please don't forget to write us a rating and review. We really depend on those to expand the reach of Dadsplaining and reach out to more moms and dads. So thanks for hanging in there with us. Thanks for listening along tonight or today. And until next time, I'm Jesse.
And I'm Brandon.
And hey, Brandon, little dad joke for you to end the episode. What is Elmo's favorite type of hamburger bun?
Elmo's favorite type of hamburger bun? That's so random. I have no idea.
Sesame seed.
Yeah, okay. I was trying to look up a joke as well in the moment, and unfortunately, I don't know if it's the hour of day. I think maybe that plays into it, but there's just some bad ones and some that are inappropriate. So you people making inappropriate dad jokes, we're not here for that. That's not cool.
Who is the intended audience for an inappropriate dad joke? That's something I've never understood.
We're parents. Like, why is that what we want to do? I don't know.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thanks again, folks, for tuning in, and we will see you next time. The advice and opinions expressed on Dadsplaining are solely those of its hosts and guests and should not be substituted for the advice of professionals. If you have a serious concern about the health or development of your child, please consult with your pediatrician. If you're experiencing an emergency, please call 911. Don't listen to us. We're really just good for dad jokes. If you're enjoying Dadsplaining, you might enjoy this other podcast from our friends here at WSB Radio.
Hello, friends. This is Jared Yamamoto from the Power Pod, and we are a weekly recap show where we cover the current events of the week. And of course, during these times, COVID-19 is on everybody's mind. We will cover the good, the bad, and the ugly regarding this crisis. We will be serious with the coronavirus, but we will also find ways to have fun with it as well. So be sure to check us out Saturdays from 11 to noon and Sunday mornings from 9 to 11 on 98.7 FM and AM 1340 WGAU, or grab the Power Pod podcast on any of your favorite podcast providers or your favorite smart speaker.